it's Alexa, and today I am bringing you the first of my December wrap-ups. I actually managed to get quite a bit of reading done over the last 2 weeks, which I'm really excited about after a very slow reading month for me in November. So I read a total of, let me count, 16 novels, 4 manga volumes, and 3 novellas, which is a lot, but considering I had nothing much to do for the last 2 weekends, reading was all I did. Without further ado, we're gonna talk about the books I read this month. The first book I read was Spindle by E.K. Johnston, and this is the second book in the 1000 Nights series, and this one is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty. It still ties into the first book, which was based on 1001 Nights, and it is really good. Like, I really enjoyed this book. It does have a bit of a slow start, I would say, because you're still getting used to the world and the characters in this one. It has a lot to do with weavers and the Cursed Princess, obviously, which is all very Sleeping Beauty. But I felt like I wasn't really connecting to anyone in this book, not until the big meet cute part happens, which I thought was really like the starting point for the actual story to progress. Once I got invested, it was really easy to keep reading and to keep hoping that things would turn out okay for the characters. Unfortunately, the one thing that kind of brought this one down for me was the ending. I didn't particularly love that. I thought it was kind of rushed, and I felt like it was also kind of sad after all the build-up we'd had, so that was a little disappointing. I ended up giving this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The second book that I read was our Flights of Fantasy book club pick for November, and that book was Geist by Philippa Valentine, and this is the first book in a Book of the Order series. This book is set in a world where geists are around and they haunt people and possess people, and the only people that can fight against them are called deacons. And Sorcha Faris is one of the most well-known deacons. She's an active, which means she uses her senses to battle these geists in combat and to, you know, keep people safe. And she's given a new young partner when her old partner is injured in a sort of fight that they're in at the beginning. And together with this young partner, she's sent to this remote village to investigate like this big appearance of the geists in the recent months. And together they find out there's actually a lot more going on beneath the surface, and they also encounter the pretender to the throne, Raed Rosin. I hope I'm saying that right. And yeah, it's basically this crazy paranormal fantasy-ish adventure. Again, this one has a very slow start for me because it was kind of confusing to try to make sense of the world when we were really just thrown into it. But once I kind of got a sense of what was going on, and once I started really feeling for these characters, I ended up really enjoying the story. I think like you'll find that the actual plot is something that you may have encountered in other books before, but even so, I thought that the personal touches that were in this story, or specific to the story, were really, really interesting, and they definitely kept me hooked until the end. I think it wrapped up really nicely. I liked how it ended because it was pretty solid, but it also gave enough room for it to continue as a series. So I ended up giving this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. And now we are about to go into the manga portion of this video. So first, I read the first volume of Princess Jellyfish by Akiko Higashimura. This book is about a girl who lives in an apartment with a bunch of other girls, and they're basically nerds who fangirl over a certain kind of fictional couple. Anyway, so they all live together and they basically have a few rules. They don't allow boys in their apartment, they don't really interact with like the fashionable crowd. But all that changes when the main character encounters this fashionable girl, and they become friends of a sort. And it's just about the misadventures that occur after that initial meeting. And I thought this was really cute. Like, it's a bit out there, but it's also really, really fun. It's got such funny characters in it, and they're pretty stereotypical, I'd say, but I didn't mean I enjoyed it any less. And the heart of the story itself, like the friendship, I really enjoyed that a lot. The budding romance was something I'm curious about but not super invested in yet, so that remains to be seen. Will I read the next one? Likely, because I do want to know what happens, and I thought it was pretty cute. Plus the art style is pretty great. I really enjoy like how the characters are illustrated in it. And this one I gave a 3.75 out of 5 stars. The next manga that I read was the first volume of the Ouran High School Host Club by Bisco Hattori. Confession, I'd already watched the entire anime, so I kind of know the entire story, really. So this is very like a romantic comedy that's set in a private high school for rich kids. It's about a scholarship student named Haruhi, and she, one day while she's looking for a place to study, she goes into this room and she accidentally knocks over a vase that costs like $80,000. And the people who are gonna use that vase in an auction are actually the members of the Ouran High School Host Club. Their job is to pretty much entertain the girls in their school. And so in order to pay off her debt, she starts off working off her debt as part of the host club, as someone who serves the host club, but then eventually she becomes part of the host club herself because they mistake her for a boy. And it's just this really cute, it's also really out there, but it's really cute. I really love the members of the host club. Like, I have so much affection for them, and it's mostly because I've seen them all in the anime and grew to love them. But it's just fun to like revisit the entire story in this manga, and I happily read this one and would happily continue reading this series. And obviously, because I enjoyed it so much, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is a spin-off for an anime that I actually watched this year as well, and it is Sword Art Online Girls Ops, and this is the first volume. And this basically features 3 female characters from Sword Art Online, Liz, Lifa, and Silica, and they are teamed up together to go on a mission. And on this mission, they encounter a character that reminds them of Kirito, only it's actually a girl. And that's basically the premise of this first volume. And what I loved about this was it allowed me to go back into the world of Alfheim, which is in the first season of Sword Art Online, and I liked being around these characters even though I didn't particularly love them in the anime. And it's just a really cute story of friendship. It's also a story of these 3 characters and how they moved on after the events of Sword Art Online, the anime, so that was really enjoyable. I love the adventure, I love the quests, I look forward to seeing these 3 team up more in the future. And this one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. And the very last manga that I read was one that was recommended by Kristen over at Super Space Chick, and that was Yamadakun and the 7 Witches by Miki Yoshikawa. And this one was slightly more risque than the others, I guess that's the best word. The basic premise is that there's a boy and a girl, they accidentally fall down the stairs together and kiss, and they swap bodies when they kiss, and they can swap back when they kiss again. And it is about all the hijinks that ensue because of this switching. They never explain what the magic behind it is, so you just go along with it. And again, it's like one of those premises that's completely outrageous, but it works. It's just so enjoyable, it's so funny. I can't help but adore the 2 main characters, even though I feel like we also didn't really get to know them too well yet. This was really, really enjoyable. It made me laugh a lot. And again, it was just a little more risque than I'm used to reading in manga, which I don't particularly mind, but maybe you guys might mind. There's a lot of boobs in this one. But anyway, it was still pretty enjoyable, and I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And next I revisited a favorite from my childhood, and that book was A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. And this book is such a delight to revisit. I loved Sarah Crew as a kid. I freaking love her so much as an adult. I just think her imagination, her constant positivity and hope, and her hard work and her determination and her just general kindness to people, it's just so inspiring to me, and I still love it so much. I also just enjoyed like the whole boarding school setting and like the magic of, people being in the right place at the right time and all of that. I thought that was really fascinating, and I fell in love with it all over again upon my reread. So I ended up giving this one a 5 out of 5 stars, which is not surprising. Next book I read was Brightly Woven by Alexandra Bracken, and this is Alex's debut novel, and it is the only one of hers I hadn't read until now. It is a YA fantasy. It's about a girl named Sidel, and she is basically taken from her village by a wizard named Waylon North, and together they must travel to the capital of their kingdom in order to warn the king, I believe, or the queen, it's the queen, in order to alert everyone over there for the reason as to why there's a brewing war with a neighboring country. And there's a lot more to it than that. What I liked about this was I thought like the magic was interesting. I love the concept of like the journey from place to place to get somewhere. I've always enjoyed stories like that. The one thing that I will say is that it took me a while to get really invested in either of these main characters, and that was part of what made it a bit difficult for me to read the story at first. But eventually, obviously, something clicked for me. Wayland was the one I first clicked with, and then shortly after I fell in love with Spindle. Overall, I would say this is a pretty good debut. I gave this one a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Complete change of pace, and I read Night by Eli Wiesel. I hope I'm saying that right, and this actually won the Nobel Peace Prize. This is basically a very brief account of his time in a concentration camp. I feel like this gave me a real eye-opening glimpse into what it must have been like for the people of that time who were put into the concentration camps and who had these experiences. It was brutal, it didn't hold back the punches, it made me feel horrified, terrified, angry, sad. It was like this whole emotional range that I felt, and I think that the fact that such a short book managed to pack such a powerful punch is a very important thing, and I think this is a book that a lot of people should definitely read. And I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next 4 books I read are all part of a series, and that series is called OMG Shakespeare. The basic premise of this entire series is that you're taking a classic Shakespeare play and translating it into text speak and emojis. YOLO Juliet, which is obviously Romeo and Juliet, Seriously Hamlet, we have Macbeth Killing It, and A Midsummer Night No Filter. And I could talk about these one by one, but I think you guys mostly know the plots of these different stories. Translating it into like a more modern form was really interesting. I like that they basically cut down to the bare bones of the story and gave that to us, and that's really enjoyable to me. It actually became more interesting to me. I think it was just because it was so much easier to like not have to wade through all of the dialogue and instead just get to the meat of the story. The next book I read was an ARC, and I believe this book comes out on January 31st of 2017, and that book was The Careful Undressing of Love by Corey Ann Haydu. This is actually one of my most anticipated 2017 books, so I was so excited when I got it that I could not help but, you know, dive into it as soon as I could. And this is the story of the girls of Debonair Street, and they're said to be cursed because when they fall in love with someone, that person will die. The girls experience the death of one of the boys that they all loved in different ways, who was one of their gang basically and dating one of the girls, and how it unravels the truth of their community and their relationships with one another. It does sound like it has a magical realism aspect to it, and I guess in a way like there's almost like this weirdly strong belief in certain traditions and signs and acts and all of that that does make it seem like there's actual magic, but I also think that it's more like when a group feels and acts a certain way and reads so much into things, it comes across that way. As with all the other Corey Ann Haydu books that I've read, it's a quietly powerful story because it tackles grief, and it tackles what happens when you let grief overtake your life. It tackles how people approach grief and what they feel is the correct response to it. It also tackles love and all the forms of that and how it translates into so many things. And I think like thematically this is one of Corey's strongest books yet. I really enjoyed it. I think Corey Ann Haydu is an incredible writer. Her books are always very different from anything I normally read, and I truly love this one. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was also a highly anticipated 27 read for me, and that book was Caraball by Stephanie Garber. It's about 2 sisters, Scarlett and Tella. They both dream of going to Caraball, which is a well-known magical circus type thing, performance type thing, that, you know, there's actually a game and you can either participate in it or watch it. And the book starts off with them getting invited to Caraball and progresses from there. And it is like so incredible how much I love this book. You have to kind of get over the hump of the beginning where she sets up that situation, but once you get to the part where they're, you know, where Caraball starts and where they go to Caraball, oh my goodness, it is like beautiful. The descriptions were so evocative. I really think that she knows what she's doing when she's describing the setting and the things that are going on and the things that they're wearing and seeing and doing and hearing and smelling. It's just, it felt like I was at Caraball with them, and I love that. The main characters were interesting. It took me a while to warm up to Scarlett, only because like she could get aggravating personally to me, But, you know, I was so interested in seeing what would be the outcome of her story because all she really wants is to find her sister and be reunited with her sister. Just to watch her journey through Caraball with absolutely no idea who she can trust and what she should do. It was just so, like, crazy and mind-blowing and amazing and descriptive. I can't even talk about this book properly. I don't even know how I'm supposed to review it. This book is magical. I think that the writer is really capable of making the story and these characters and the setting come alive so well, and I would highly recommend checking this one out when it comes out. I gave this one a 4.75 out of 5 stars. The next 3 books that I read are actually novellas, and they're all the Pottermore ones. So I read Short Stories from Hogwarts of Heroism, Hardship, and Dangerous Hobbies by J.K. Rowling. That's the first one. And this one tackles some of the professors. So the parts I liked best were obviously my favorite professors, Professor McGonagall and Professor Lupin, and I liked reading more about their stories even though I had encountered most of this material on Pottermore. I think what I liked is that it goes really in depth into them, along with the 2 others. I think it's Trelawney and someone else, and it just made it really interesting. I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to Harry Potter, so I loved getting to know more stuff like that. I ended up giving that one a 4 out of 5 stars. And then I read Short Stories from Hogwarts of Power, Politics, and Pesky Poltergeist by J.K. Rowling, and this is actually the one I liked the least because it was about the wizarding government, the villains, and poltergeists, and I was kind of like meh on that one because I'm not so interested. Like, I still thought all this detail was fascinating, but it wasn't my particular cup of tea. I gave that one a 3 out of 5 stars. The last one is Hogwarts, An Incomplete and Unreliable Guide by J.K. Rowling, and I love this one. It was so cool to get to learn more about Hogwarts, its history, the people there, the place itself. It was so fascinating, and I gave that one a 4 out of 5 stars. And then I decided to read The Amateurs by Sarah Shepard, and this is the first in her new series. It tackles the story of Seneca, who goes up to a small town to partner up with someone she knows from a website called Case Not Closed in order to investigate the cold case murder of Helena Kelly. I didn't feel like it was very well developed in terms of character, but I thought the plot was interesting and pretty like twisty and stuff. So that was really fun, I guess, and I just couldn't put it down once I got to a certain point because I had to know like how it ended and what happened. So I would have to give it props for that at least. I ended up giving this one like a 2.53 stars. Then I read a middle grade book called The Girl in the Tower by Lisa Schroeder, and this one sort of has a Rapunzel vibe to it. It's about a girl named Violet who has been locked up in a tower by a queen because the queen needs her for a spell to make her beautiful, if I remember correctly. And it's cute. I love the fairy tale-ish like storytelling, and I love the little illustrations peppered throughout. I think it was fun to meet like a spunky, smart main character. This was also a very quick read. I ended up giving this one a 3.25 out of 5 stars. You Don't Know My Name by Kristen Orlando, and this is the first book in the Black Angel Chronicles. This is about a girl named Reagan Elizabeth Hillis, and she has been trained all her life in order to become a Black Angel, which is like a secret division of the CIA, which is pretty cool. So she knows how to wield weapons, she's good at strategy, she knows how to protect herself basically and survive. She is at the point in her life where she's trying to decide if she's willing to sacrifice a regular life in order to be a Black Angel or if she wants to go the other way. But in the midst of all that, something happened to their parents, and this whole thing escalates and a lot of things happen. I was really pleasantly surprised by this. I liked the whole spy side to it. I thought that was fascinating, and even though I thought the plot that had to do with her family was a little bit predictable, I still enjoyed it tremendously. I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. I wasn't so keen on the romantic angle of it, even though that's like a main point in the story. I thought it was cute, but it wasn't like my favorite. I mean, I still thought they were cute together, but like, I could have also been fine with them just like flirting. That would have been fine too. I am actually curious to see what happens next, so I probably will check out the sequel. I give this one a 3.75 out of 5 stars. Perigee and Me by Ross Montgomery. And this is about a little girl who befriends an alien that shows up on her island after a storm, and the ensuing adventure. This one was like such a pleasant surprise when I read it. I thought it was a very cute middle grade. It has very interesting themes that I was not expecting, aside from the friendship. It's not necessarily the most realistic thing, obviously, that I've ever read, but it was really cute. I thought it was really fun. I would definitely recommend checking it out if you're in search of a middle grade that's a bit whimsical, but also got a little heart to it as well. And I ended up giving this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I want to talk about in this video is The Book Jumper by Mechthil Glaser, and this is basically about a girl named Amy. She and her mom moved back to her mom's ancestral home in Scotland on the island of Stormsay, and it is there that Amy learns that her family lineage actually gives her the ability to jump into a book. So she can jump into a book and live in its story for a while, and it is her family's responsibility to take care of literature. But in her journey as a book jumper, she discovers that someone is stealing things from books, and she is desperate to find out who it is in order to help her friends and to save the books. And it is a fun premise. It's executed fairly